Okay, now how about the spirit? Make your spirit flare. Anyone want to have a go? You've got one. It's promoting you and urging you to do so.
Hmm.
It's been talked about, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I find that actually kind of irresponsible,
Yep.
personally. So in Taoism and Buddhism and a lot of the Asiatic and Eastern religions, they have this particular exercise. And the exercise goes somewhat like this, where you sit in a meditation and you think, am I my body? And you let that response echo. And you'll say no, because you even use the word my body, right? It's clear, isn't it, that you're not? Yeah. Am I my mind? Am I my thoughts? Am I my emotions? And it's not like rote. You really want to go through and listen for something to echo. And what you get to is this point where you almost feel a bit stumped. Like, okay, I'm not any of these things. What am I? And the answer is your spirit. It's an individuality within you that very seldom gets to come out. It is that I that we've been talking about, not in small letters, but capital I. Yeah? It is what is essentially you. That isn't your thoughts, that isn't your body, that isn't your emotions, that isn't your whatever. It's none of those things. It's almost indefinable. I mean, we can put the word spirit on it, but it's almost undefinable, um, because in our own experience of ourselves as an example of the ray of creation, it is the inner God. It is the one. It is the unity of yourself that cannot be described. Does that make sense? So it's a bit harder to get in touch with the spirit aspect because it's kind of indescribable. But you've got one. That's what it is. And where does it come from? Do you know? If the soul
Sun, I
comes from
believe.
the planets, yeah, sure, the sun, right?
Yeah.
Hmm, yeah. The local god of our neighborhood.
Mhm.
1.3 billion Earths can fit in it, or some ridiculous number like that. I'd say that's pretty massive. And interestingly enough, really everything does come from the sun. When you go to work in the day, what you're really spending is sunshine.
Spending sunshine.
You're spending sunshine. Everything you do, you spend sunshine. Now think about it for a moment. We'll start off with a mundane example, which is, well, let's make it easy, solar power, right? Some countries, some neighborhoods, whatever the case might be, have solar power. And so that's pretty much direct, isn't it? Where they pump electricity in and convert it directly, usually with like gallium arsenide or something like that, but they convert it
Mhm.
directly into electricity, which then pumps through your house, converts it into light, and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. That's easy to see, isn't it? Because it's pretty much direct. But other places burn fossil fuel. Now, fossil fuel, whether it be millions of years old or however old it is, but fossil fuel is, generally speaking, the remains of photosynthesis, collecting sunshine, turning it into sugars, yeah, and then it goes into a decay situation under pressure, and it becomes oil or coal, these types of things. And that becomes fossil fuel that then we burn to turn, to boil water and turn turbines, and it becomes electricity and light and all of this type of stuff. Now, when you get into the idea of the human complex, we eat vegetables, fruits,
Right.
and in many cases animals. But they all got their initial energy from the sun. And when you consume it in the form of carbohydrates and proteins and all this other type of stuff, what you're consuming, ultimately going back to the cause of the cause, Well, no, the cause is sunshine. And so when you plod off to work and, hammer nails or type on computers or whatever the case, whatever you might do, you're spending sunshine because you have to go replenish that. Have you ever had this kind of idea? I want to get you to the point where you begin to look at the cause of things. It'll put you in a more profound state. Soul and spirit and sun and all this type of stuff. But yeah, you can get in touch with your own local sun by asking yourself that question from your soul or from the impressions that your soul receives and from how you process it internally. That aspect of what is it that's actually perceiving. And you get down to kind of this unity inside yourself that you really can't describe. But once your consciousness, which isn't your spirit, but once your consciousness begins to touch the spirit, it's called a spirit flare because it creates a connection, creates this two-way street, this two-way channel between your external and the internal aspect. Yeah. So there you go, soul and spirit. Granted, it's just an introduction because then you have to learn how to actually do things with them. But now you have a frame of reference that the physical body is the coat or the house of the soul and spirit. Okay?